Welcome to Long Term. I'm Ty King. In this podcast, we've been talking about recovery in so many different forms and fashions and like different outlets of what do we need recovery from? How do we get it? What's working? What's not? How do we make a sustainable future based on, these interviews that we have with people that have lived experience or providing services to people who need recovery in so many different areas. How do we make it sustainable? Because we can't always rely on, federal grants or funding or even private donors. And so how do we make it to where everyone has access to some sort of recovery? And I mean, the most important thing right now is to figure out what solutions are there right now? Like what's being worked on? Like there's an obvious issue, there's a problem, there's millions of people suffering across the country right now that need some form of recovery, but don't know how to get it, don't know resources are there, or they're just not ready for it. And so, yeah, making sure that we're providing that and how do we get there. So it's a long journey and not a simple task to tackle at all. And I'm sure Shannon can attest to that. So yeah, it's always best, and I always love having people who are providing those services, but also have lived experience at the same time. You know what I mean? I think that's the most valuable resource is not trying to solve a problem from the outside, but knowing what it's like to have been on the inside, and then be like, well, this is what the real issue is, right? And so, Shannon, I'm so glad that you were able to make time and that you were willing to come and talk and be a guest on Long Term.
Thanks.
Okay, that's so how do you define Shannon in a box in a simple thing
God,
when they say, "Hey,"
that is no, that's not definable.
yeah,
We don't even try that. One of the key spiritual principles is acceptance, right?
yeah,
So in acceptance and humility, recognizing like it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to screw things up. I've probably hit my head multiple times on every wall you can, you know, uh bad financial decisions, bad dating relationships, just like, so for me, um, I would say I walked into recovery with the trauma emotions of a 5-year-old. And due to recent memories, it was actually three. So, trauma emotions of a 3-year-old and the using addict brain of a 14-year-old. So, on a good day, maybe I was 9 mentally and emotionally. And I didn't know how to process or perceive the world.
yeah.
My addiction didn't start the first time that I put a substance in my body. It started the first time I stole candy and got away with it and realized I like that. I like the natural high.
Like the
Anything.
adrenaline pumping of like getting away with something.
Yeah. So, when a sponsee says, "Hey, let's jump out of an airplane because I have cancer," I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, sure.
yeah.
I got this. No problem. Right. Because I learned a long time ago and a lot due to trauma that I could get through anything if I close my eyes, but as an
Yeah.
adult, that doesn't always work,
No,
you know,
I did that on a roller coaster recently. I was like, I can live through this.
I saw
You saw
pictures
those?
of that.
Yeah.
I was like, "Wait a
That's
minute."
how I lived through it, but I only have my eyes open during the photo because I've like scoped out where the cameras were because I was like, all right, at this point, I need to at least have my eyes open. But like when we're doing twists and loops and all this stuff, I need to have my eyes absolutely shut.
When I saw that photo and I see all the girls having a good time
Mm.
and the big guy is, like, gonna die, I'm
I
like,
was
"Oh
so
my
like,
god,
yeah, this
that
is
is."
totally off topic, but like I was so secure on like going up to the we got this. You know what I mean? Walking up in the line, we wait for a freaking 45 minutes or an hour because those lines are crazy. And I see that the seat in front of us is an old lady and a little girl. And I'm like, oh, this is nothing then. Like, if they can do it, I can definitely do it. Maybe I'll even put my arms up this time. I get on there and I'm like, oh my God. And I was like,
They were,
"Ah."
'cause, women have
Yeah.
this close your eyes, get through anything,
Yeah.
so which, I don't know, I don't get into the whole gender role thing. I think
Mhm.
they all have, of course, love my females, right? Those are the ones. But I also had men in recovery who saved my life.
Yeah.
They were the ones who held my hand,
Of
who
course.
showed me how to walk when I didn't know how. They were the ones who took me home to see my family for the first time in 2 years after being in
Yeah.
prison. I have done 5.5 years in prison, 4 years federal, and a year and a half in the ADC. And it was that stint in the ADC when I was in federal prison, I just played softball, went to my little job, kicked it. I was in prison in California because I'm from Vegas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're in prison in California because you're from Vegas?
So in feds, you're gonna go to your closest prison. They try to get you within 500 miles of home in case your family wants to
The
move.
feds do now?
Yes.
Oh,
So, well, that's back in 2010. I was arrested April 17th, 2010, and I was
yeah.
released April 11th, 2014.
For what are you asking?
Oxycontin. Me and Federal Express had a love affair,
Okay.
and the federal government was not a fan.
Oh,
So, somebody wore a wire on me from Boston. So, I still remember that night very vividly.
yeah.
And, in active addiction, all I could concentrate was on the pain I was in at the time. But I was a single mother of four. Um, I was engaged to an attorney, going to school as a paralegal. Everything looked good on the outside, showing up at their school, volunteering. But really, as soon as I dropped the kids off, I didn't even make half my classes. It was more saying I was enrolled in school just so it was socially
Right.
acceptable. The mask that we have to wear to ourselves in the outside world, especially, you know, one of the hardest things for me is when I hit bottom.
Mhm.
And I finally was able to work my steps and look at myself. And, in that fourth step, and I put the harms done to me and the harms done to others. And I realized that my childhood had been very traumatic, but I had carried that over into my children's childhood. My daughter was 10 years old when the feds raided. I used to say my house, but reality is it was their house.
Yeah.
That was my four children's home.
Mhm.
And I had violated their safety with my addiction. You know, um, I would drop them off at school. We did this little program called Desert Trackers every morning, volunteered, did the whole PTA, Weeblo's mom, um, you know, anything and everything to make it look good on the outside.
Yeah.
So when I was arrested, I'd never been arrested before. Um, it was a shock, you know. I was released 16 months pretrial on an ankle monitor. And, you know, I didn't change during that time. They said, the judge said, no narcotics unless prescribed by a doctor. Well, at this time, I have doctors meeting me at Wendy's for $300. All I have to do now is get it in my name instead of somebody else's. Where
Right.
before, I was doing that. I got 4 counts of possession and 1 conspiracy charge. And so that's why, and when they sent me to prison, they let me out to a halfway house, and I started getting high in the halfway house immediately. In Vegas, the halfway house is right behind Circus Casino. So, um, if you're unfamiliar with it and you've never done time, one of the things that happens is, you don't have flashing lights or sirens and you only see even certain colors, right? Everybody's wearing gray khaki, guards are wearing blue. I can't remember. It's been so long.
Yeah.
But you're only seeing what the guards are wearing and what
Right.
you're wearing. You're not used to all these colors, all these cars,
Oh,
all
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
And so you get out and your anxiety's already vibrating at
It's
a 10, but I'm
yeah.
emotionally immature and don't know that.
Right.
And so, started using again. There was 96 guys in the halfway house and 16 females, and I thought there was 96 reasons I wasn't getting a job. I was the type of woman that if you were a man and you said hello to me, you need to give me $5 and I was going to talk you out of it one way or another, or your pack of cigarettes, or I thought men were only to use. And that was partly because had been treated like I was only to use
Oh,
as a child.
yeah.
So as you go into that, I learned to flip it. You're not going to use me. I'm going to use you. But what that does
Yeah.
is it eats at your soul,
Sure.
and you can't continue in a manner like that.
Mhm.
So, even after I got out of prison, I still, um, I made them send me back. And the way I made them send me back was with my addiction. I've flown Con Air 3 times, shackled, guns pointed at me, getting in an airplane,
Wow.
be transported.
You've been on the real Con Air.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, no movies
Wow.
here.
Yeah.
No movies here, and then to get on a prison bus and go to the yard.
Yeah.
I remember one time distinctly, getting out and turning around looking at my, cellies and saying, "Hey, hold my room, I'll be right back." And I was right, I was back 3 weeks later, and they were doing longer sentences, and it was annoying to them to see me come and go so much,
Yeah.
I was about 32 at that time. I was 29 when I got arrested, so 30, 31. Um, I didn't know how to be a human being anymore. I knew how to I was as addicted to power and control
Mhm.
as I was the drugs,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, and it was just doing that was a rush. The idea of, like, quitting drugs was never there. It was, they need to quit drug testing me.
Yeah.
Because these are legal, I get them from a doctor, so they're legal, right? And then eventually my addiction grew to where it was methamphetamines and heroin, I was,
Mm.
shooting them together at the same time.
Wow.
Uh,
Jeez. I've never done either, but like, oh my god.
together at once,
Jesus
yeah,
Christ. That's
met a bank robber while I was at the federal halfway house, had a baby with him, because I'm smart.
that's a great t-shirt.
Yeah, right?
Met a bank robber at a halfway house, got married.
Well, and that's why when we tell our clients don't get in a relationship and treatment, I'm
Oh, for
like,
sure.
really don't do that.
That's a yeah, and I've heard of a lot of people, and sometimes it works out. And like Tila was here, you know what I mean? She found, the man of her dreams or whatever, like they got married and worked out. But like most of the time that is not the case. And like you shouldn't take that as be like, well, it could work for me too, because like there is a trauma bonding sort of experience, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
goes through there. And I think a lot of people like sort of I don't know, they lower their standards, because they think even though I'm in recovery, like, I could never date somebody who has never been through this, you know what I mean? Like, I could never a quote unquote "normie," you know what I mean? Somebody who's had control of their life, like, they'll never understand me. So, it's sort of like your draw to your people that you relate to, you know?
But isn't that a stigma too, though? Okay, so one of the things that drives me,
Yeah,
we don't want to be called junkies. We don't
sure.
want to be called drunks.
Okay.
Why do we look at normal people and say, oh, they're normal, they can't understand me?
Right.
Isn't that a double stigma?
Well, yeah, it definitely is. I mean, like, you're believing in the same stigma that was put on you by those people. Yes, and
But was it really put on you by those people, or was
I
that
mean,
you?
when your only touchstone is through like movies and TV and
Mhm.
stuff like that, which is why I started this whole podcast, is try to learn about, people in recovery. And it's been over 2 years of like having these conversations with people like
Mhm.
yourself, where it's like, I just wanted to understand because, well, I really didn't know at the time, but then it turns out, well, my dad was an alcoholic and all this stuff. And there was a lot of stuff I was trying to understand about my own life and I didn't realize it at the time. But I thought that, recovery was, like there was an episode of like Home Improvement, right? Where one of the kids starts getting into drugs, smoking marijuana or something. They wasn't even get serious. And they were like, all right, it's time to get serious. And we're all going to meet up. We're having this intervention with the family in the living room. They're going to go to a rehab for 30 days and they're going to get out. And like, you'll never hear about that subject matter ever again. And I'm like, oh, that's how it works. Okay. You go to a rehab thing and you do
Mhm.
your whatever 12-step program and then you're done. Like you don't have those cravings or anything like that, but that is not reality whatsoever. But that was my touchstone was like what was taught to me through movies and TV and books and things like
Mhm.
that without having like the real life experience, didn't even register to me that I was living with a raging alcoholic. You know what I mean? It was like that didn't even cross my mind or blip on the
But see, that's a
radar.
perfect example of our environment
Yeah.
determines on what's going to be normal for us, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you think about it, all of us are sponsored by every person in our life, especially when we're looking at childhood. We were sponsored by our teachers, we were sponsored by society, you know? And what happens is we get stuck in these gender roles, men as providers, women as homemakers. I'm an 80s baby,
Yeah.
I'm old. So, like my grandmothers didn't, they got, they went to work. My one grandmother was a teacher of a one-room schoolhouse, prior to marrying my grandfather, and then my, mom's mom was actually a my maternal grandmother actually got into real estate, and I do come from a long line of educated, strong women,
Yeah.
right? So for me, it always kinda made sense to fall into leadership roles, and in which I carried with me into my addiction, you know? So when they arrested us, me and my co-conspirator, there was nowhere to go up, right? There was we were at Alpha and Omega. And so, it was like, so even though it was my first hit, it was or hit, it was my first charge.
Yeah.
It means going, to prison
Yeah.
for me because of when there's nowhere else to go, they gotta get somebody, right?
Of
That
course.
have a 97% conviction rate for
Yeah.
a reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there was that. And then, I get out there and I don't go to recovery. I got this, and he was doing good. I mean, he was teppanyaki chef, got cooked for people like, Dave Navarro and or actually
Jane's Addiction.
Weather was a regular of his, have pictures. My children have pictures of him with those people.
Mhm.
And and I have a son with him. Uh and what that looks like today was he went back to using. And he took off with all of our money in the car and went, on the lam, so to speak. And, and you don't do that long with the feds. So, it took him a couple of months to catch up to him, but they got him. They put him
Right.
back into prison. And then he got out. But by that time, I had moved here to Arkansas. So, um, I moved to Fort Smith, Arkansas because I'm smart. And I
Mhm.
thought,
Best
if
place in
I
Arkansas to
just
move to,
if I
especially if you
just
have an
move
addiction problem. Yeah.
yeah.
Move to Fort Smith, Arkansas. That's the cleanest thing.
I mean, yeah, if I just move, I mean,
Yeah.
of course, I'm not gonna do the same thing
Yeah.
in Fort Smith that I was doing in Vegas, and this is where
Right.
meth reenters my story.
Oh my God. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
When I was just in county jail, right? When I went to prison, I spent 2 years in jail, but like there was constantly people that were coming in there, even though it was Conway County, or Faulkner County.
Mhm.
Um, that most of the people in there were actually from Fort Smith, and they just committed crimes in Conway. And then I went to prison, and I was like, man, and there was like every white dude in there was from Fort Smith and in meth addiction, meth charges, or of some sort, like manufacturing or whatever the attempted what do they call it? Trying to distribute whatever that's called.
Conspiracy to distribute.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Lots
yeah,
of them, and like
to
missing
deliver.
teeth and all that stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, this is Fort Smith because I don't think I'd ever even been to Fort Smith before then. Oh yeah, I did one show. I used to be in a band, so I was like, what? We did one show there, and that was it. That was my whole impression. And yeah, I was like, man, Fort Smith's got an issue, like for sure.
I was just gonna say, I'll bet doing a show in Fort Smith was exhilarating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fun. It was just like this little hole in the wall. It's not even in there anymore. It was
Yeah.
owned by the guys that, Nighttime Tattoos were from Conway. Then they moved out there, started a venue, and it was, yeah, it was
Crazy.
just, oh yeah. My whole life was crazy back then, though. So it was dropped out of
It
college,
all made
started a band, started a studio.
it all made sense,
It all made
you know?
sense. Yeah.
And that's the insanity is the way we live. We don't even think about it because that's just life for us,
Yeah.
That's just our normal groove.
Yeah.
Get up every day, find ways and means to do whatever we're gonna do for the day, right? And
Yeah.
if we get to have some fun with that, cool, but if we don't, as long as we're not dope sick, we're okay with that too,
Yeah.
So going through that and then moved here January 17th, 2017.
Okay.
And by um December 8 December 6th, 2018, I was in Fort Smith jail. I was homeless at Hope Campus, shooting meth and heroin, 5 months pregnant, headed to prison.
Yeah.
And I know now that, that was the moment that my higher power sat me down to save not only my life, but my baby's life. Adopted him out. He's with a good family. I got to pick him
Okay.
out. And, there were some cool similarities in between. So my grandparents had a camper and would take me trout fishing when I was a kid. And in these people's book that they had, it showed them doing that, and I wanted him to be able to have a childhood like that. And,
Yeah.
you know, I still feel that it's the best decision I made. I got out of prison with one change of clothes and $75 and started my life over at the Phoenix House here in Little Rock. Shout out to BJ Brady and Jarity and also to Felicia McCoy for being there.
Hmm.
Being there. BJ Brady
Yeah.
is a huge part of my story. Love her to death. Um, you know, I'm a product of what can happen when you surrender. Because when I got out, again, I got that $75 gate check. My family's upset with me. They've been raising the son that I had with the bank robber, my other son I had used with. I have
Yeah.
6 children in total, and I didn't raise any of them. In my addiction, I gave that away,
Yeah.
so being able to relearn and have the space that I didn't have to go back and be a mom right away,
Right.
and at the beginning of it, I wasn't grateful for that, right?
Yeah.
But today I'm so grateful that my parents chose that I could not parole to them to put me in Little Rock. After a 7-day blackout, I was allowed to go to my first 12-step meeting. Um, and I fell in love with the program. Here were people like me who had found, we have any addict can lose the desire to use and start a new way to live.
Right.
So losing the desire to use, that happens, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's finding the new way to live that's hard.
Absolutely.
I didn't even know that when you go camping,
You
how to pay for these, like,
mentioned. Oh, sorry. You're completely off it. Off it. You're like, how do I? And I was like, I heard that song. How do I live with that? Because because you mentioned Con Air earlier, and like it triggered that song that was in the movie.
oh my
Yeah,
God,
there. Yeah,
yes.
it's all coming together.
You're too funny. Yeah, so it was like I learned things like you have to pay for camping spaces.
Yes.
You know, I luckily because of childhood, I did know how to pitch a tent barely.
Yeah.
But I learned how to pay rent again, how to pay
Awesome.
my own
Yeah.
cell phone bill. I took a job at McDonald's and then
Yeah, like
you know,
huge steps for somebody who's like never really had to do that. Or you know what I mean? Like you took a completely different path. And I think that's where and going back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like we separate I guess we say we, like I'm part of it, but like I guess I've got my own things that I'm working through, you know what I mean? But like people who are in recovery from something, you know what I mean? You obviously lived life very differently from the quote unquote normal people, right? And so because of that, like those simple skills that they were taught, from early on, you know what I mean, and been doing on, they went to college, they went to, or right into working for their parents or whatever it was, you know what I mean? And like did the straight and narrow thing. And like, that's so foreign and different to us, where it's like a new skill that we have to consciously try to commit ourselves to learning how to pay bills, how to manage our money, how to do simple things like develop a work ethic where you're clocking in, clocking out for a
right.
job. Right. And so I don't know, it's just like, I can't understand you, but you obviously can't understand me. And like, that's going to be a long journey of like trying to, but we never walked in each other's shoes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
trying to learn something you've been doing for a long time, and you'll never learn how to do what I did. Hopefully. Thank you. I hope. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
anything's possible.
Right.
But, and that's the thing is recognizing that everybody's journey is different, right? Your
Yeah.
journey is different, my journey is different. Each client that I encountered, their journey is different.
Yes.
I might, so worked at McDonald's and then I got a job at Sonic. With 18 months I relapsed. And
Yeah.
when that happened, thank God for my sponsor and the person who ran the sober living I was in and my grand sponsor because my sponsor was one of those women I could be honest with. And
As they should be, right?
well, one of the things that we hear a lot in recovery is don't get in a relationship in the first year.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did it.
Oh my God, the first one I used with him, but I
Yeah.
continued to get in relationships because I have
Yeah.
codependency issues,
Yeah.
and so, something I'm healing from, something that I have a little over 5 years clean now. My clean date is June 17th, 2020. Um, but, you know, so in that, when we're first clean, we're we're not gonna choose the best friendships. We're not gonna choose the best anything because we don't
Right.
know how,
Yeah.
right? And so, um, yeah, sure, got with this guy and, I was letting him pretty much use me for a month. He didn't want a relationship with me, but the moment I let him put a shot of dope in my arm, he all of a sudden wanted this relationship, and I'm like, "No, I He's like, "Let's go to Chili's and eat," and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
The people from my fellowship might be there, I can't go." And my sponsor and grand sponsor were calling me saying, "Come home." Um, a white key tag in our fellowship is, sign a commitment to your recovery. It's day 1. They said, "Pick up a white key tag and, chase your recovery the way you chase drugs.
Wow.
If that don't work, chase it the way you chase men."
Yeah.
And it's the truth because, most of us, we're going to call a friend, our partner, the dope house
Mhm.
every day, right? But are we calling our sponsor every day?
Yeah.
And I had that relationship with that woman and with that grand sponsor. And so, they had me, my grand sponsor had me do an assignment on relapse and recovery. It's a chapter in the basic text.
Mhm.
And so, in that, it says a relapse can be the jarring experience, which brings about a more rigorous application of the program. And I grabbed onto that and I said, you know what? That's going to be me.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I began to chase my recovery. I was at every meeting, every event. And then I realized, hey, wait a minute. I'm starting to. I was completely codependent on, um, on my friends and going everywhere and doing everything, and today I don't have to go everywhere. I don't have to do everything. I've learned that, it's hard for me to see my value and worth, but I know that I have enough value and worth with them
Yeah.
that I don't have to I don't have to be at everything. They're not gonna replace me,
Right.
And so, learning that and then, my son Uh, eventually got clean too, and so he's here in town.
Oh, good. Yeah.
He has been embraced by my recovery community. When I was 17 months clean, I went to work for Natural State Recovery Centers as a what's called the care tech, which is where you kinda shuttle the clients around to make sure they're in group on time, make sure they're following rules, all the
Yeah.
things, and then, I actually got terminated in February 3rd of 2023 because, sometimes I still have a very fly mouth and, I got mouthy with a client and I was completely in the wrong.
Yep.
And a friend of mine, got me in with a company, Lumina Behavioral Health, and they hired me as a CIT for prison reentry, and BJ Brady came back into my story then,
Nice.
and I got to go and start facilitating groups. I had learned while I was at Natural State, watching the other clinicians, how to facilitate a group, and so I had started doing that, and, when I was there and I had actually done some in prison through the Think Legacy program as well, and so when I was there, um, it I stayed clean through being terminated, and my bosses at Natural State saw that, and
Mhm.
they called me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to come back?"
Yeah.
So I'm back at Natural State. I've been back since May 1st of 2023, so I was fired very short term, and then, and it's been onward and upward from there. Natural State has one of the things I love about that company is we believe in not just our clients, but we believe in our employees, but we believe in our clients. Like,
Yeah.
we are going to go to war for you.
Yeah.
If you call Natural State, the moment you called us and said you were an addict, we cared about you. We cared about your life. One of the things I get to do today is I am on the admissions team. When I went back to work there, I was a discharge planner. I'm still a CIT. I'm getting ready to test. Um, Hopefully within the next 10 months, get my CADC, so that'll make me licensed. But getting to hear those phone calls and getting to hold the hand of another addict. I facilitate groups at residential and at outpatient. And then I'm there at night, and I get to watch each one of them learn to walk. And that's how we get stories like Tila's.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Starting out, I was her care tech. And then when I got terminated from Natural State is actually when I became her sponsor. But because I wasn't under a license and the time had passed, I was able to sponsor her. But, you know, I remember her getting a phone call to get to the sober living, and she was holding a marriage certificate to Josh.
Yeah.
And watching their walk, and one of the beautiful things is that because they have both been in the same treatment facility, and I am by no means co-signing anybody getting
You're not.
no, I'm 5.5 years clean, and I'm not ready to get
Yeah.
married, so God bless them. Everybody's different in their journey, but what we don't get to do is shame people.
Yeah.
One of the things I see in the recovery community, if you have under a year clean and you get in a relationship, we're gonna shame you. That is not okay. I am not going to shame anyone ever. I always tell them, sleep with whoever you want, be prepared for the consequences. When you watch the
Yeah.
person you are in love with walk in with your best friend and you gotta hang on to your seat,
Yep.
lived experience. So when you gotta hang on to that chair and not feel a part of, can you not get high?
Right.
Because if you can do that, then go ahead, get in a relationship.
Yeah.
But if you can't hang on to your seat while your heart's pounding out of your chest, I suggest you don't,
Yes. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, learn from the consequences about all that, of course. I think if you shame somebody, it's just going to encourage them to do. Well, I mean, look what happens to kids. You know what I mean? When you tell them not to do something, what are they gonna do? Do it the first time you turn your back on them.
Yeah.
But I mean, adults in the same way. And like you're talking about, your addicted brain, like it's still a little younger than the average person of whatever age you're at, right? And so, like, you're still thinking that way. You're like, I'm gonna get away with this because I'm a rebel. You know what I mean? I'm gonna come and find a way to get around it. Does it ever work out? It worked out for Tila, yeah, but
I
it
mean, I have seen other relationships where it's worked out,
yeah.
you know? So,
I can't imagine somebody's mentally prepared to even be in a relationship or to give that, like, equal value back and forth, you know what I mean, in an actual relationship, you know what I mean, when you're so early in recovery yourself.
I know people with multiple years clean that don't know how to do that.
Well, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm saying like
So,
that especially, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think everybody's different,
Yeah.
just like every person in their story and their addiction
Yeah.
and is going to be different, right? What I feel is that because I have watched this happen. I have watched people lie about it, hold
Yeah.
secrets, and then I've watched people relapse over it, right?
Right.
Because they couldn't go to their sponsor for
Yeah.
advice because their sponsor told them not to get in a
So
relationship.
what if you get so attached to this person and then all of a sudden things fall apart?
Or what if
Now you're in a mental state. Yeah, right, exactly.
they relapse? What if they don't?
Exactly right. Yeah.
And yeah, and if you can't, and I've been in relationships where I had an ex that relapsed 3 times, and he actually used my recovery against me, my job, and told me, well, if you're going to help other people, why can't you help me?
Yeah.
You know? And so it was like a blame shifting onto me, and then of course you meet my traumas with that blame shifting, and it's, I'm supposed to be able to fix you because that will validate me as being good enough.
Yeah.
Because the give and take, like you were talking about, I'm just now learning how to do those things, right? Everybody's different. Some people come in knowing how to do those things. My job as a sponsor is to walk people through the steps,
Yeah.
not to judge any of that. My job as a clinician is to meet you where you're at and help you with your treatment plan.
Right.
My job is substance abuse. My
Yes.
job is not relationship counselor,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
For a reason. Um, And yes, we can help with some of those things such as and we do at Natural State, we teach about codependency and we teach about
Good.
because most addicts do suffer from those,
Yeah.
right? I know we give attachment style quizzes, right? And one of the things I love about working in treatment I remember one of my coworkers, and I'm the worst at this. They'll be doing groups, and I'll look at something, I'll be like, "Oh, I need that." And and I will take it for myself, and so it's helped me in the area of learning what a cognitive distortion is because that's really where all of our addictions and all of our we were taught thinking errors if you ever
Sure.
went through a penitentiary program, but, cognitive distortion is your CBT, and it goes right along with your dialectible behavioral skills, and so if
You
you
said
can
a lot of big words there. All right.
if you can actually use those together,
Yeah.
right? But reality it all coincides with the 12 steps too. Because
Absolutely.
in step 2, we learn we're trying to get a restoration to sanity.
Yeah.
That insanity wasn't about doing the same thing over and over again. We knew what was gonna happen.
Mm.
We lost our perspective and our sense of proportion. So when we lost that, we don't see things correctly anymore. Enters the cognitive distortion, personalizing, fortune telling,
Yeah.
all or nothing thinking. And we teach it. And because we all 90% of our staff is recovering addicts, we know how to coincide the steps with the therapeutic modalities to
Mm.
give our clients the best possible outcome for those substance abuse treatments and also maybe take some because the disease of addiction lives in the brain.
Right.
And so once we start reframing those things, then we start taking the justifiers and then the disease of denial off, and we start actually dealing with reality and get out of whatever we thought was happening, the paranoid and delusional thinking, um, or even the personalization, because self centeredness is the core of our disease. So
Mhm.
I can start to realize the relationships. Okay. The reason most relationships don't work out in early recovery, if ever, is because you have two people who are selfish, right? They want what they want. They want it to be about them. But in a real relationship, you want to know about the other person. You want to honor them,
Right.
right? And so when you have two selfish people who don't know how to honor other
Yeah.
people, including themselves,
Yeah.
yeah, you got a recipe for disaster.
And that's not just for people in recovery. That's right. That
Everybody.
applies for everybody.
Well, I got really lucky when I was 2 years clean. I moved in with a retired couple, and I get to watch how they interact,
Mm.
and I have, these beautiful people in my life who teach me about politics, teach me about my house looks like an art museum, so I learn about art. I learn about just so many things that I would not have been exposed to
Right.
in my
Yeah.
life, and
That's
they
awesome.
have been the biggest blessing, and I love them both and their daughters, and I have these cool relationships. I was talking to one of the girls the other night, called her, and, you know, we were talking about, what she just moved to Atlanta, and what she wants to do right now with her life and her career. So, it's cool to get to show up, and they're normal people, right?
Right.
And they have no reason under God's green earth to have invited an addict like me into their home. I've been to federal and state prison. Nobody they know has ever even been to prison. So, when they invited me into their home, first of all, um, it was only supposed to be short term. That was 3 years ago, and I'm still
Right.
there, and
Yeah.
that's my family now, and I have a relationship with my dad and my stepmom, and I'm becoming the woman. I have relationships with 2 of my children and well, 3 total, but 2 that are grown and then the 11-year-old. My job is to become the mother they need when they need me
Yeah.
because I gave them away with my choices. I have to wait till they're ready to want me in their life,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
For
You
sure.
don't kick in doors in recovery.
No. Absolutely. Well, we're running out of time, but I see you got your boots on, and I got you something. Here.
You got me something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you brought me breakfast here, so I appreciate it. Twice now. You've done that for me.
Oh, what did I
And
get?
I love Halloween, by the way. So this is yes. First of all, you were talking about how you.
Look, I got my own Harley.
Yeah. You needed your bike for your freedom,
Yeah.
right? So your old riding boots and everything. So yeah, and there's some candy and stuff in there, but
Oh,
yeah.
how sweet. Thank you
So
so
you're welcome.
much,
Yeah, for
Ty.
sure.
I love it. Look,
You could ride away.
I'm so gone. Yeah. No, I'll be in Eureka Springs, but I do want to get a trike.
Yeah,
I think I could do that.
those are cool. I never ridden on one, but they look awesome. Yeah,
I will take you.
yeah, definitely.
And we're getting pictures because I need a picture of a guy on the back of my
Of course. So yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and for being willing to come in here as a guest and to talk about, all the amazing things. You've said several things here that are like, I don't know, I guess I kind of knew or have heard in different ways, but like not as succinctly as you. You have a way of putting everything together in a way that makes perfect sense. Yes, like encapsulating it, but like here is you have trouble defining yourself, but you have a a real talent at being like, well, here's what this is. You know what I mean? Whenever you're going through this situation and what to look out for. So yeah, I really appreciate that. You give me a lot of things to think about. Yeah, and I'll have to look up some of those words that you said earlier because I'm not in the recovery field, and I have not been to those classes. So there's lots of things where people will say that they're going for this license or this, something else. You know what I mean? They'll have all these letters on the end of their name, and I'm like, I have no idea what that means. And
I'll text you a little book,
thank
a
you.
little cheat sheet. I'll
Yes.
also give you. So some of them are therapeutic modalities that
Yeah.
are used commonly with personality
Right.
disorders and all these different things, even outside the substance abuse community.
Yeah.
I know in some of the other podcasts you're doing and stuff, it might be helpful. So I will
Sure.
text you some of those.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, Shannon. Well, thank you so much. Where people want to follow you, where can they go for that?
Follow me.
Follow you. Do
I
you
know I
do
have
you post anywhere? Do you have a
Yeah,
website?
Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram, I guess.
Yeah.
I have a TikTok account too.
There you go.
I do have those. I'm not real big on social media.
Okay.
That might be, I don't know if that's partly because I'm an 80s baby, but also
Yeah.
partly like I'm not a peer, I'm a clinician.
Sure.
And so, what I do is more what the peers do individually is private
Sure.
with their clients. What I do is more behind the scenes. We for instance, so mine, I cannot be friends with someone who I have provided services for a lifetime.
Yeah.
There is no, where a peer you can be like, they just got out of treatment today,
Yeah.
and they get to have the fun with them, and that's really cool. But one of the things I love about Natural State is, they don't take away from our autonomy. So we are able to still go to meetings, and I love when I see my clients in meetings. There is no bigger joy than watching someone that you saw their first day, and you're like, I don't know if this one's gonna make it. And 6 months, a year later, picking up those key tags, staying clean, getting their families back.
For sure.
I recently found out that one of our graduates just celebrated 3 years.
Great. Yeah.
So, in Portsmouth. Super.
Enforcement. That's a huge
Yeah,
accomplishment.
right,
Turn that into
right.
yeah.
Yes,
So
so
well, thank you for watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find us on all the audio podcast platforms as an audio podcast. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify or iHeart, wherever you may be listening to us, you can find us on YouTube at Long Term, a podcast in recovery. You can find all of the episodes of Long Term, but you can also find all the episodes of Breaking Quiet, the new show that we've been producing with Mary Beth Hill that focuses on the women in recovery and telling their stories that don't normally get the stage light on a lot of these events that we go to, right? If you heard something here from Shannon, which I'm sure you did, like I've heard lots of things here where I'm like, I need other people to hear this. The biggest ask we always have for this show is not just to like and subscribe. Of course, we love all that and it helps us grow the message. But the biggest thing that you can do to help us grow and to get the message to the people that need to hear it is to share this episode with someone that needs to hear something that Shannon said here today. The worst thing that can happen is they won't listen to it. The best thing that can happen is it saves a life, right? And everybody that they're connected to, and it's a ripple effect, right? So with that, thank you for joining us with every episode. Thank you, Shannon, again for everything and for breakfast. Thank you. And coffee. Yeah. Got out the whole treatment here today. So until the next episode, we will see you in the next one.